What's up, nerds? Welcome back. Today we come to the exciting conclusion of the wild and gross tale that has been Batman Reptilian with issue number 6. So like I mentioned, this is the end of this particular series, and it kind of went where I thought it was going to go. I knew that the story was going to involve Killer Croc because it's called Reptilian. So what else could it involve? I just didn't anticipate how off the walls and, like I mentioned, gross it was going to be. But it gets even more gross here at the end. But anyway, if you remember at the end of the last issue, Batman and Killer Croc were kind of like teaming up. Well, not really teaming up. He was sort of kind of helping Killer Croc to get out of the way of his newborn spawn. And then when they found themselves trapped because Batman had to defend a whole bunch of bird watchers, he just jumped into the damn thing's mouth. So that's actually where we're picking up here. The first page is the monster just being like, what the hell? Like, he can feel Batman inside of him. He's just like, yeah, something about what I just ate isn't right. So he kind of like takes off. And then the bird watchers who are still standing there with Killer Croc are like, yo, he just killed himself. Like, how does that even help us? And then we see the Batmobile is there just like awaiting further instructions. Alfred, who saw the whole thing going on, is just like, oh my God, like, what the hell is even going on? And then he notices something coming from the bat monitor, I guess, where he can see like all these random like just characters typed onto it and shit. So he has no idea what's happening at first. And then if you'll remember, there's Volkov, that like underling or whatever, who Batman tricked into his car and has just been trapped in it. So now we see that Batman is starting to like send orders, instructions to the car telling it to like follow him and everything. So it starts doing that. It takes off after him and the monster. And then we can see from inside the stomach where he like gives it another command, and it's asking him to confirm. What is it, code red or something like that? Yeah, code 9 red. It's asking him to confirm, and we can see where he's trying to do that, but because he's obviously, he probably can't see very well inside this damn thing's stomach, and then he also is very cramped in there, so he can't really type very well, and it's probably all wet and gooey and sticky. So I mean, he really can't type very well onto his damn phone. So we see where he keeps trying to like type confirm into it, and then even Alfred's like, come on, like he knows he can get in. So eventually he does manage to actually like confirm the shit, and it says that it's going to like Batmobile says it's going to self-destruct. So of course Volkov is like, what the hell? Like, no, 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 because he's still in it. So he's like, don't you please, don't kill me. And so it starts a countdown, and then when it gets to the end, it actually ejects him out, because I guess I knew he was in there. And we get this this pretty hilarious face from him, which is about what you would expect if you just got ejected from the Batmobile. And then it blows up and like incinerates the damn thing, which is pretty cool. Like, look at this. It looks pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie. Like the way that he's burning and shit from the car exploding. Very nicely done. And then Killer Croc can see where like Volkov is like parachuting down, so he's like, who the hell is that? And then even Alfred is there just like, Bruce, like, is he okay? They have no way of knowing. And then we get this like sequential page right here where we can kind of see like something is kind of moving around in the remains of the monster and everything, and then something like stabs its way out, which of course you can imagine what it's like. And when I saw this whole sequence of events playing out, it immediately made me think of that episode of American Dad where Steve and like all of his friends end up like reenacting the scene from Raising Arizona where like they crawl out of the mud and shit. Like that was immediately what I thought of there. So anyway, he manages to get himself out, and then he like takes off his little oxygen mask thing or whatever, and he's starting to crawl away from the damn thing. And of course, who else should he encounter but Volkov, who starts beating the shit out of him, like kicking him in the face and whatnot, saying like, you bastard, like you used me as bait, you kept me trapped in there, had me scared for my life and shit. So he just keeps kicking the shit out of Batman. And then all of a sudden Batman tells him like, I could hear its heart. So then he stops and he tells him it's still beating. And then he's like, right. And he's like, and you're marked. Because if you remember, Volkov was the last person who was at that meeting where this damn thing like squirted its pheromones over on everybody, or like where they all had their pheromones squirted on them by Killer Croc. So he's saying like, yeah, you're still marked, which means it's coming after you the same way it did literally everybody else. And then we kind of get these like few panels right here, these very slim panels, just kind of giving us a few beats. And then we see where Batman says, I'm afraid you're beyond help. And we can see where this dude is looking worse for wear, because it has its way with him, kind of like it did with everybody else, and just chewed on him and like just mauled him for a little while. And Batman basically just watched. And he tells him like, just no way to fit it all back into you again. Remember what I told you back at the start? The Batman never kills Volkov. And he's like, you, and then he just like walks away. He's like, but things have a way of happening anyway. So he just leaves him there, and then he gets in contact, obviously, with Alfred. He's like, hello, you. And he's like, yeah, I know. And he's like, just please send me another, like, transport or whatever. You can send it to my location or whatever. Just send it to where I am. So he says, well, we can talk about that later. I need, give me a second, will you? Because he can see that Killer Croc is behind him. So he turns around and he immediately, like, tases him in the face. That's what those white things are in his cheek. So he starts tasing the shit out of him. And then Batman's like, sorry about that, just the taser. I need you to send me another mobile unit. You can just have it home in on my current location. And I need the number for that outfit attached to the NSA, the one run by the tall fellow, Gary Barry. We will, I promise we will. And he's like, all right then. So he goes off, and then he tells Killer Croc walkies or whatever. So we see where the like Fed agents come and they scoop up the damn monster and everything. And then Batman is even telling him, like, you're not going to do anything tedious with it, are you? And he's like, hmm? So he tells him, use it to engineer some sort of super predator for the military-industrial complex, that sort of thing, which, of course, that's what they're going to do. And, like, the damn agent even tells him, like, honestly, what do you think, what do you take us for and everything? And he's saying, we're the United States government, not some dreadful rogue corporation. And I really love this, the way that it's, like, after he said that, it's broken into two more panels, kind of showing where Batman was just basically just, like, staring at him, and he was like, glad to hear it. So, he knows that they're lying, but he's like, well, at least he told me they weren't going to, I guess. So he says, because let's face it, you're not the one who'd have to clean up the mess. And he's like, oh, your life is such a trial. It is incredibly tough, isn't it? I mean, to still be breathing after the damage it's taken. I've never heard of anything quite like it. And he turns and tells him, like, yes, well, you haven't met its mother. So we see where they have Killer Croc in a cage and everything. And of course, Killer Croc is trying to tell him, like, you know, you got to get me out of here and everything. But he says, like, I'm afraid I can't. I'm the one who put in the call to them after all. So he says, like, but they're going to turn me into a guinea pig. And he says, well, they need to know exactly what it is you are, which means, yeah, they're going to have to poke and prod you and kind of do some experiments to figure out what exactly you are and everything. He says, look at it this way, Waylon. You've had a damn good run. This is the price you pay for all the fun and games. So he's just like, no, Batman, no, as they, like, load him up into a truck and shit. So he turns around and he sees that, yes, Alfred has sent him another Batmobile, so he goes over to it, and you can see that there's like a thermos in there. So he goes and he like pours out some, I don't know, coffee, tea, whatever it is. So he just like drinks and he's like, Alfred. So Alfred always knows just what he needs. Anyway, so he asks, like, do you have milk? Or we kind of go back to that previous conversation where he was asking Killer Croc, like, do you have milk? He's like, what, do you want me to go to the deli or whatever? He's like, no, I mean, are you lactating? Because this thing probably needs to, to feed. And he's telling him, like, you could possibly be in some sort of hermaphroditic phase. Like, who knows? You might be a female and you're kind of switching over. So that's where they kind of like leave it off. And I will say that this was a nice touch to kind of like reference an earlier conversation that also kind of like leaves the door open for some sort of like, I guess, a sequel, some follow-up where you're saying like, or on the way to it at any rate, perhaps in some hermaphroditic phase. He says, find out in the next exciting installment, I suppose. And that's where it ends, where we see Killer Croc is in the cage and he's with the other agents and shit, where they're taking him to go and experiment on him. And that's actually where it ends. We get a little bit of like the plot, kind of like the rough outline, the idea that Garth Ennis had, and then we kind of see some of the like early passes at the art from Liam Sharp, which is very nicely done. Like, this isn't in the like painterly style that we saw throughout the series. This is more like his regular style, which is just, kind of more straightforward comic book, but with still like a little bit more of a gothic touch to it. So very nicely done. I actually did end up enjoying this story a lot more than I thought I was going to, which, as I've mentioned in just about every video of this review, or reviewing this particular series, I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to enjoy this because Garth Ennis' stories are always kind of hit and miss for me. So this one was definitely a hit. I can't even deny that. I ended up enjoying it beginning to end. Yeah, there were some turns in there where I was like, this is kind of weird, but it wrapped up very nicely. And I even like the way that he ended up dealing with Killer Croc in the end, because yeah, in a way it kind of seems heartless for Batman, but at the same time he said, you know, think about it this way, this is, you had a good run and this is the price you pay for all the things you all the things you've done. I mean, a lot of people tend to, a lot of writers, I guess, tend to paint Killer Croc as more of a sympathetic figure, which you can definitely see where he is, but at the same time, it's like, he does eat people on occasion, you know what I mean? And he's a very vicious killer at that. He's worked for gangs and shit, so he's not exactly the type to be repentant for the things that he's done. So yeah, he had a hard time coming up, but at some point you are responsible for your own actions. And so, I mean, that's kind of where we see this. Like, he was part of the group that came to this like meeting of villains to try and plot how they were going to try to take out Batman, right? So I mean, that's always been his thing. He's always been a villain, and it puts a sense of finality into this, but at the same time, like I said, it leaves the door open to see like, well, maybe something else could come from this. Maybe he is becoming a female. Who knows? Maybe Killer Croc is trans. Is Killer Croc the first trans? Well, no. He wouldn't be the first trans villain in the Bat Rogue. I mean, in the Bat Rogues gallery, would it? Well, maybe in Batman's, but whatever. Splitting hairs at this point. But that's what I'm saying. It kind of just felt like sort of like an Indiana Jones type of end to it, you know, like he's being given over to top men. So I mean, like it seemed to fit to me. If you were going to tell the type of Batman stories that I'm pretty sure Garth Ennis would like to tell, it's that Batman would absolutely deal with his villains in a way that there's a sense of finality, you know, that they end up going on to something that, yeah, it might end up killing them, but well, I'm not the one doing it to them. They're just serving out the consequences of their crimes and their actions. So he wouldn't really have that much sympathy for them at all, as we saw here, like the way that he was always constantly just taking jabs at Killer Croc and everything. It was like, yeah, this isn't someone that he feels any sense of sympathy for or anything. It's like, he understands this is a villain and I'm going to deal with you as such. So it kind of ended very well on that particular type of note. So I'm not upset about it at all. I ended up liking the story a lot more than I thought I was going to, if I haven't said that already like 100 times. But yeah, and then also with the child, I mean, that was also very nicely handled, because we know if you're giving it over to the government, of course they're going to experiment on it and try to turn it into some sort of like super soldier, or they're going to try to extract some of its DNA to try and like do something with it, you know what I mean? So obviously something like that is going to happen. But well, Batman isn't the one who's going to have to deal with it, I guess. He said that he probably would be, but well, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening if they ever build off of this particular storyline in any significant way. But we'll see. Overall, like I said, this was very nicely handled. I was surprised because I'm not the biggest fan of Garth Ennis, but I mean, you know, when he hits, he hits. So this was one of them. So I mean, I don't really have much else to say other than that. I liked it. If I were to want to reread it, I think I would enjoy it just as much a second time through. But yeah, I think that's about all I can say for this particular review. So I don't know if anybody else kept up with this all the way through it. If you did, feel free to share your thoughts with me. If you didn't and you were just, I don't know, watching my videos, reviewing them, feel free to tell me what you think about the way that it ended, the way that, you know, Killer Croc was handled. Do you think that that was the wrong way to go about it? Do you think he's more sympathetic and maybe deserved to be, you know, to get a helping hand, to get away from the government? You know, feel free to share those thoughts with me down below in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, then definitely make sure to like the video. If you didn't, well, hey, you watched it all the way through, so I appreciate that. And make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, so that way you know when I have new content coming your way. If you would like to share the video, you know I always tell you I appreciate it, because I truly do. But I mean, if you're done here, then go and read a book, especially these. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.